I thought, that after 11 years, once I had repaid my debt to society, especially after, working for Cal Fire for 3 years, I didn't think they were going to deport me.
We lived through the drama, and yeah, we still here. We battled these demons and all these monsters. And plus we did this without no sponsors. Everything that we're on our conscious, we weighing it down. And we overcome, sticking together, we all in this one. We heading home, gotta get all my people to come. It's gotta be done. We paving the way until we see a much greater a day.
My name is Javier also known by DeportedArtist. I was born here in Tijuana. I was taken to Oakland, California, where I grew up when I was about 3 months old, and ended up getting deported 10 years ago. I've been here in Tijuana, deported. Yeah, 10 years.
Were you undocumented?
I got my permanent residency when I was 16 years old, so I was already a permanent resident. I ended up catching a case. That was my first time ever going to jail or whatever, and because I got a criminal conviction, they ended up taking my permanent residency away. 20 years old. That was my first conviction ever.
First offense.
Yeah.
And your residency, was it obtained through your parents?
Yes, it was obtained through my parents when I was 16. However, nobody really explained to me, that a permanent residency didn't really mean permanent, So I already at the time I already qualified to be a U.S. citizen. I never went to become a citizen because I was afraid that I had to give up my Mexican citizenship. I wasn't too sure about the dual citizenship. So because nobody really educated me on that, I never really took interest on or priority on getting my citizenship, and later on it affected me down the road.
I think that's the case for a lot of us childhood arrivals. So I arrived around 4 or 5, and the same, I got my residency through my mom. So I didn't really understand the importance or that I needed to do anything further, like I can work, I can travel, and by the time you realize it's too late, right?
Up to that point, I had never gotten in trouble. I'm gonna rewind about 3 months prior to my arrest, right? And I kind of went on a self-destruct mode. So for 3 months, I went on a drug binge, drinking a lot, and I ended up committing a robbery. And it was a first offense, right? They ended up giving me 2 years for the robbery.
Whose house did you rob, or was it a business?
It was a store. But since I had a firearm, they gave me 10 years added to my sentence, right? Which was crazy. They gave me a 10-year gun enhancement on a 2-year crime. So they gave me 5 times as much time for gun enhancement, even though I didn't use the gun.
Just for having it on you.
Yeah, for having it on me. I ended up doing about 11 years. And the last 3 years, I ended up doing it as a wildland firefighter working for Cal Fire for the state of California.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's interesting. So you did 11 years. The last 3, you pretty much volunteered, because I believe they're volunteer firefighters, right?
I wouldn't say volunteered, right? It was like they pretty much told me, hey, you're going to go to fire camp. And you can't really refuse an assignment in prison.
Were you paid for it?
I was paid $1 an hour when we were on actual fires.
You were paid $1 an hour to fight fires.
I was getting paid $1 an hour to fight fires. And when we're not on actual fires, we were like rehabilitating schools, roads, parks, forests, and we were getting paid 13 cents a day. It was almost like slave labor, like
it's not almost, it is.
You didn't have a choice, right? You're forced to do this, right? If you refuse like the assignment, whatever, pretty much you go back to prison. They put you in the home, whatever, for refusing the assignment. Like for $1 an hour, we risked we were risking our lives every day. We were fighting fires. It did feel like we were being used, you know.
Oh, you were.
And
You're being exploited 100%.
Yeah, we were being exploited. And after 3 years, and I was 30 days to the house, and they came and they served me a paper that said it was an immigration home, pretty much. They told me that I wasn't gonna be allowed to parole, and once my parole date came, that ICE was gonna come and they were gonna detain me.
Were you expecting that? Or was it a surprise?
But I thought, you know, that after 11 years, that, you know, that once I had repaid my debt to society, especially after you know, working for Cal Fire for 3 years, you know, I didn't think they were going to deport me. So, candidate for deportation.
So the jail chooses which inmates to screen over to ICE, so ICE can determine what their immigration status is
Yes.
based on their last names.
Yes.
It's giving prejudice. That's interesting. So I have questions about your time in the Cal Fire. What happens if an inmate was to get hurt, injured, or did it for 3 years? No insurance, paid $1 a day. Did you receive anything at the end of those 3 years?
No. They didn't give me any kind of benefits or anything. I know they were offering people who were paroling, who were not getting deported, they were giving them the option to get hired as a real firefighter once they were out to the streets. Ever since I got deported, I didn't qualify for that. And not too long after my deportation, I think it was Governor Gavin Newsom passed a law saying if you served under Cal Fire and you were facing deportation, that they wouldn't deport you.
How long was that? When did that go into place?
I think it was a couple years after they deported me. So
What did that feel like?
I felt like, oh man, you know, I'm always missing.
The cutoff.
Yeah, the cutoff.
That's so shitty.
So I didn't have any legal representation. And when I got there, you know, I seen a lot of people who were fighting their cases with paid lawyers. They were there for about 2 years fighting their cases, and they were still getting deported. So I just kind of felt like hopeless. So I was kind of like, I kind of felt pressure to signing over my my papers once I was there, because I didn't want to be there for another 2 years fighting a case that I was just going to lose and get deported.
I remember that feeling too. I came across Army whites with no criminal record, and I remember thinking, if they don't have a shot, if they're still here after 2 years, me with what's the point? I mean, it was very, very discouraging because, yeah. I think that's how a lot of us are cornered in a way. Like, sure, you can fight for your, you know, but you're going to spend 2 to 3 more years waiting, fighting, and then some of us don't have the access to representation. So once you signed over your deportation order pretty quickly, or your...
Yes. Once I was in ICE custody for about 30 days, they gave me the option to sign over my paperwork, which I did, and I went to go see the judge. And I remember when I seen the judge, he told me, you know what, you signed the papers over today, you'll be in Mexico within 48 hours. You'll be on Mexican soil. 48 hours, you'll be on Mexican soil.
He's at the express train.
Yeah, it was, and they put us on an airplane, and they flew us out here to San Diego. I remember when we got to San Diego, they unshackled me, and they put me on a bus, and they were driving us here to Tijuana to the border, and the immigration officers, they started bumping Vicente Fernandez, and they put it really loud, and they're bumping it. They're laughing about it, and they're telling us, yeah, get used to it, because this is all you're gonna listen to from now on. Like, joking about the situation.
I think those moments of, I experienced similar things. I think we all have, and they're so dehumanizing, right? They're in that moment of your life is already falling apart, right? It's such a traumatic experience to have. Like, they sprinkle it. And they stay with us. Those moments stay with us, of inhumanity, of being ridiculed, of being poked at while we're already down. That's cool.
Yes, and then they let me here at the Chaparral, and I got processed through Mexican immigration. here in Tijuana. And when we were on the way there, the border patrol, they were telling us, "Hey, you better be nice. You better not tell them nothing, or they're gonna refuse you. And then if they refuse you, you're gonna be in American custody for longer." But they were just putting all these negative thoughts in our head, because when we got there, it was a totally different feeling. When I got there, it's almost like they were welcoming us back to our country. They were telling me things like, "Welcome back, compatriota."
Really?
Yeah, they feel good,
Yeah.
And I remember I still had my prison identification bracelet. It was a little wristband that I had, and they seen it, and they got really mad. They started screaming at the border patrol agent. They were telling him, they told him, "Cut it off on him right now. He's not a cow."
That's heartwarming to feel like somebody had your back a little bit, Did they deport you in your prison clothes, or did you?
Yeah, since I wasn't given the opportunity to parole, I didn't get a chance to get parole clothes, so I pretty much paroled in my prison clothes. I had a little sweatsuit that I paroled in, and I had all my property. I remember having 11 years of my life. They gave it to me in a sack of oranges. And then I remember, getting processed, getting kicked out, and pretty much the only help that they gave me here in Tijuana, it was some kind of program that I think under Peña Nieto's presidency, right, to help deportees. They gave us a 50 peso calling card. They gave us a little lunch with a little jugo, and they offered to pay half of my bus ticket to wherever I came from.
It's more than I got. That was like.
But that was the only help that
So you were deported in your prison outfit with a sack of 11 years of your prison letters, belongings that you had in prison. What was that like?
It was unreal. I couldn't believe that 11 years of my life, that's all I had to show for was a sack of oranges with some paperwork and some pictures. And, it was pretty dehumanizing. Like I hear a bunch of people saying, we need to humanize deportation, but I think that's an oxymoron, right? Because I don't think there's a way to humanize it.
I agree. I don't think there's a way to humanize it, but I feel that there's changes that could be made so that it's not so it doesn't strip you so much. For example, that where you talk about, crossing in your prison outfit with a sack of, all you have. The fact that you crossed in a prison outfit alone, like, to at least give us the decency to cross in regular clothes so that when we cross, it's not so obvious, you're not a target. That alone, aside from just the risk factor or the dehumanizing aspect, you're a target. You can be a target for organized crime because they know you're just being released. You're vulnerable. It literally puts an X on your back the minute that you cross the border.
Yes. And then you hear all these stories when you're in the holding cell. They're like, "Hey, when you get to Tijuana, just keep moving because either the cops or the cartel, they're gonna pick you up, they're gonna kidnap you. Don't walk this way. It's really bad. Don't walk that way." Right? You hear all these stories. You don't know what to think, right? And I remember coming out of the little bridge that I had to cross when I was being deported. And in the middle of the bridge, there was a guy. He was all in black. He had a ski mask, and he had like a machine gun, right? But he didn't have any type of insignia of who he was. And I remember I was like, okay, this is what they've been telling me about. This is where they're gonna rob me. This is where they're gonna pick me up, right? And I kind of hesitated, but then I realized, there's no way to go but forward. So I just kept walking. I remember he turned around and he looked at me and he just told me, "Oh, buenas noches." And I said, "Oh, buenas noches." And I just kept walking.
It was nighttime?
It was nighttime. It was like 2 in the morning.
2 in the morning is when you were dropped off at the bridge.
Yeah.
And you were dropped off here in TJ?
Yes.
That alone is, I always get so frustrated when I hear these stories because these are the little things that they could change to not expose us in such a way, right? Because you hear about even people that parole, murderers, rapists, they set up some type of halfway house, or there's arrangements for them. 1, for their safety. 2, so that they're not set up to reoffend and that they can somehow reintegrate. But us, when you drop us off that way, it's literally like setting us up, A, to reoffend because we're in survival mode. Whether you're going to steal money or, and not saying that we all do, but it puts you in a prime situation, especially somebody that spent a decade in prison and you're coming out to a new world, technology's advanced, in a different country. It's a setup. It feels very much like a setup, and, good luck.
Yes, they're pretty much throwing you out to the wolves. Yes, they're pretty much throwing you out to the wolves.
Yeah, that's
To your own luck. I remembered, everybody who was paroling in the States were giving $200 to help get themselves, which isn't much, but it was some kind of help to get you back on your feet for transportation, for food, or for a hotel or whatnot. But when you get deported, you don't even get that. You forfeit your parole money. They didn't even give me that, right? So, luckily I had a little bit of money in my books, so I was okay. But there's a lot of people who end up on the streets and have nowhere to go.
Did they let you contact your family?
Yes, they let me make a phone call when I got out. Luckily,
When you got out in Mexico?
yes.
But not before?
No, they let me make a phone call when I was in federal holding in San Francisco. Or from there, after that, I wasn't allowed to make any more phone calls. So I was like 48 hours. My family didn't know where I was.
So in your transit, there was no communication. There was no arrangement your family could have made to receive you. It's pretty much like you go ghost for those 48 hours until you pop up in Mexico and you can call them.
Yes, for me, when I came out 2 in the morning, I called her and she was took like 30 minutes to get there, but I got to see my mom after a day.
You hadn't seen her in 11 years?
Just some visits here and there, but for the most part, they would send me to a faraway prison. So
What was that like reuniting with your mom on this side?
It was nice. I think I don't know. I came out a little bit. How should I say, like, with tendencies to self-isolate and things like that. Being in prison for 11 years. I remember when I came out, my grandma was right there with my mom, and I remember my grandma. We came to the apartment to the place that she had got me. And when you're in prison, you do nothing but fantasize. Like, when I get out, I'm gonna eat this. I want my grandma to cook this for me. And when my grandma asked me, what do you want me to cook? What do you want me to make you? I'll make you anything like that. And I told her, I'm not hungry. And I locked myself in the room. Because I didn't know how to do it. So yeah, it took me a while to get used to being back out and being around family and things like that.
To reintegrate.
Yeah.
Not only just into society, but in the country.
Yes, to
It's
new
like
country.
a double whammy.
Yes. My family, they were here for about a week with me, and eventually they had to go back, right? They went back to the States, they left me alone. Once they left me, I remember I would do this ritual in the morning. I would get up, I would take a shower, I would get ready, and I would tell myself, I'm going to go buy some clothes, I'm going to go explore Tijuana, I'm going to go to the mall. But I would get dressed, and then I would just talk myself out of it. I don't know what it was. I was scared to go back on the streets. And I would convince myself, I was like, you'll go tomorrow, and I'll put off to the next day, And it took me about a month and a half before I left the house to go out and start exploring.
Do you think that had something to do with just being used to being locked up?
I think so.
Like you didn't really know what to do with your freedom or how to step outside. So once you get to TJ and you're in that adjustment period, you're living with family?
I was by myself.
Okay, how are you sustaining yourself?
At first, I started working in the call centers. I started working in the call centers for like 4 to 5 years. But I kind of felt like it was like a dead-end job, right? Even though the pay was all right. I was working 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, and it only left me Sunday. Sunday to have.
That's
to
like the normal work schedule out here.
Yeah.
Monday through Saturday. Real quick, how did we meet your wife?
I know my wife since we were kids. We ended up getting married out here in Tijuana once I got deported.
Did you keep in contact with her while you were in prison, or is that something that you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was in contact with her. She would visit me all the time whenever she could when I was locked up. So once she started visiting me out here, we eventually got married out here in Tijuana because I couldn't cross over there. And I was like, you know what? I don't see myself going anywhere. With this job, with the type of life I was living, right? So at the time, I had already started painting, and my wife, she had taken some of my paintings to the States. But after a while, and I started getting a little following on Instagram, I kind of started putting my little political message infused in my paintings, and I was like, I discovered, that I could use my little platform that I had on Instagram, on social media, to get my message across. I was so frustrated being out here. Nobody listens to somebody who's deported, right? When they talk about immigration reform, it's not for the deported people, it's for people that's in the States. When you're deported, you're kind of gone. You're out of sight, you're out of mind, you're forgotten by the system, right? And I was very frustrated, So through my art, I was like, man, they're gonna listen to us. They're gonna see us, right? Because I was tired of living in the shadows. I was in Tijuana in the call centers. There was thousands of us. There, deportados there. Most of the people in the call centers were deportados. However, there was like no organized. We were not organized. We had nothing coming from the city. From the government, from Mexico itself. And I came to the realization. It's like nobody's gonna come to our help. Nobody's gonna come and offer us any type of help. So it's up to us to help ourselves. It's up to us to organize ourselves, right? So that's kind of when I made the decision to start signing my artwork as Deported Artist, because I wanted to give deportados like myself that visibility. I wanted to give deportados like myself a voice, and I found a way to do that through my artwork.
One of your my favorite pieces, the one that you have at the border right now, the "No human is illegal on stolen land." That one's really, and the art that you created with that sign, it's very powerful.
And that was from my memory of me crossing the border. That was me at 11 years old. That was I remember them telling me that I was illegal, and at 11 years old I couldn't wrap my head around that. I couldn't explain to myself. It didn't make sense to me how a person could be considered illegal.
What was it like when you went to the border for the first time?
After my deportation?
Yeah.
The first time I came here to Playas, to the wall. I remember this with my family. My wife came with the kids, and I remember we were looking at the wall, and everybody was like, "Buy it, right?" It was like a bittersweet, right? It was like the playa was nice. It's a very beautiful place, but in the background is the wall, right? And no matter how you try not to look at it, try to disregard it, not to think about it, it's always there. It's always a reminder of what of everything that's keeping us separated, right? My wife, she has to, she drives 8 to 10 hours to come visit me. and it's been hard, you know. But I like mom. It's been 10 years, and you know, at first people would tell us, they would tell her, for the most part, you know, why you with them? He's deported. You know, he's never gonna, he might never come back. Things like that, right? Yeah, so now, yeah, it's the first time that me and my wife came here to Playas. I remember seeing the artwork that was there, and it was the first part of the mural project. It was at first it was only 5 portraits, and I remember looking at that, and I remember telling my wife, one day my artwork's gonna be there. I want to come to that wall because of what it represents. You know, I want to put my art there, and I remember going over there. I remember seeing Lisbeth Santana right there. She was working on the mural, and they were like touching it up and cleaning it up. And we went over there to go volunteer, and without knowing, you know, I was telling her my story, and without knowing, I was talking to the person who was in charge of the project, right? So after telling her my story, she was like, "Man, you need to come put your face over here, right? You need to come paint your story." And she was telling me how they were doing a second portion of the mural project where they were adding more storytellers to it. And she invited me to come partake in it. You know? So I was really excited. And when we were painting the actual portraits, you know, we were painting it in a immigration shelter here in Tijuana. And at the time, it was a bunch of people there from all over Mexico who were fleeing violence, who were waiting their turn to file for political asylum. So I got to paint my portrait, you know, with the help of the refugees. It was a nice experience because I got to hear all their stories, you know. And you know, one thing that I realized, you know, was that, you know, everybody migrates because they have to. You know, nobody wants to leave their homes. You know, everybody does it because, you know, they have to. They have no choice. You know, for a better life. You know, so that's one of the things that really stuck with me through, you know, from that project. You know, was being able to paint with their refugees.
That's neat. So your portrait was one of the ones currently on there? The ones that are a little bit faded now?
Yes.
The childhood arrivals?
Yes. I'm on there. I was a permanent resident. Along with me on the mural were dreamers, childhood arrivals, deported veterans. My friend who was adopted, was taken to the States as an adoptee, but they never really fished his immigration status, and he ended up getting deported as an adult, though he was adopted by U.S. citizens.
Adopted by citizens that didn't do the paperwork.
Yeah.
And then sent out.
Yeah. So everybody on that, all the faces on that mural represent different stories, different experiences, and it was cool to how they put the QR codes, right? I remember being at Playas, and I remember hearing people talk about the mural, not knowing that I was one of the ones that helped paint it. And I remember, you know, for the most part, it was positive feedback from the community. You know, they really liked the story behind it. I remember hearing some people say, "Oh, why are they painting themselves on there? They're not real Mexicans," you know. And I was like, "What?" You know. And then, you know, and then I started talking to them, and then I explained to them or whatnot. But yeah, you know, it brings me up to you know, I remember when I first got here, it was a different type of almost a different type of discrimination being coming back to Mexico, right? You're treated as like you're a mess up, right? Like you walk down the street and they hear that you're deported, and people judge you. You know, people are like, "Oh, surely he's a gang member. Surely he was in prison." And yeah, from, you know,
Sometimes they're
So-
right,
sometimes
but there's
it-
more to us.
Exactly. Sometimes it's true, but everybody's committed a mistake. Who hasn't committed a
I
mistake?
say everyone's, we're all criminals. It's just we're not all held equally accountable. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
And especially for the people that are quick to point out, oh, you're a felon, this and that. We've all done shit. It's just we don't all get caught. And the justice system in the U.S. is not set up to hold each race equally accountable. That's just facts.
Exactly. Hey, when sometimes when I post about immigration on the social medias, sometimes people, for the most part, it's positive feedback. Sometimes people tell me, oh, you know what? Well, you deserve to get deported because you're a criminal and things like that. But you know what? I more than repaid my debt to society. There's people who have done far worse crimes than me, and they gotten a second chance. They gotten a chance to start their lives over. I think it's unfair that they pick and choose who can stay with their families.
As you talk about repaying your debt to society, I mean, yeah, you were a criminal, but good enough to fight fires, good enough to put your life on the line, and that should count for something. I personally feel like I would carry some sort of resentment, for those 3 years that you put in, and especially when that law was put into place, that could have potentially saved you from deportation. I experienced something similar in my case, where a couple of years after my deportation, there was a directive set by, I think it was Biden, that nursing mothers couldn't be detained anymore. And I remember feeling like the injustice, like if that had happened just a little bit sooner, my case would have turned out differently, but I think those little things or changes at least maybe didn't make a difference for us, but for somebody else, it was what determined their fate a little bit differently than ours. Do you feel like your quality of life is better here than it could have been in the U.S. had you paroled?
I think my quality of life here is pretty good. I especially coming from the environment that I came from. However, nothing could ever equal to being with your family. I don't care if we were poor or in a different country that was more messed up. As long as our family was together, I would have loved to have that opportunity. So I think the quality of life is linked to being able to be with your family.
I agree. Absolutely. I think you could live under a bridge, and as long as you have your family, you'd be happy. You could be fulfilled. So right now, you sustain yourself through your artwork?
All of my artwork that I sell is to help support myself and to help me keep spreading my message. Since I got in here to Tijuana, I've been trying to speak up for immigration reform for the deportados, for us deportados, right? Like, yes, we've gotten deported for committing a crime, but there has to be some kind of legal pathway for us to be able to come back. I got deported for life. I got a lifetime deportation. But even though I had spent all my life in the States, I got deported to a country I had only visited as a kid.
You received a lifetime deportation on your first offense.
Yes.
That is heavy. That is really, really heavy. I feel like it's double jeopardy, right, for immigrants, because you go through the district courts, you serve your time, you do all that shit, and then you're handed over to the immigration courts, and you're tried again for those same crimes, and you're given more punishment for those same crimes.
Yes, it is double jeopardy. I was already convicted. I already paid my debt to society.
And repaid. I feel like your 3 years in fighting fires, that was like your restitution. That was more than restitution. That was you putting your life on the line for nothing, pretty much, right? And not because you had a choice. So you more than have repaid your debt to society.
To come out and then be deported after that, it just seems really unfair. Why should I be paid for this? I'm paying for the same crime over again. And not only myself, my wife's paying for it. My kids are paying for it. You know.
I'm assuming they're U.S. citizens.
Yes. You know, my wife's a U.S. citizen. My kids are U.S. citizens.
For people like us, where the system is very unforgiving.
Yes.
You know, and particularly for crimes of moral turpitude or crimes of violence or guns. I believe the only thing that can supersede that is the U visa, that it includes the waiver of an admissibility, the pardon, so to speak. After a certain amount of time, can you file for a pardon?
Supposedly in my case, no, because I have a lifetime ban from the U.S. But you know, we've been talking to an immigration lawyer, and I don't want to give too much details on my immigration case, but we're hoping there's some light at the end of the tunnel, so we're hoping that I'm able to come back home soon.
Yeah, immigration laws are changing all the time, and I always tell people that, like, talk to an attorney, because every case is so unique. There's no same immigration case, and you know, I hope there's hope for you. I think it's a common misconception too for us that once you're deported, it's the end. There's no more. I used to feel like it was a death sentence, or you know, like life is over. There's no more. I can never come back. And similar to you, I met with an attorney, and they gave me a little bit of hope. Often on social media, I receive that, well, you can't. You're deported. That's it. You know, but even lifetime bars aren't always lifetime bars, and I think when you're going through the process, the ICE agents, they do a really good job of making you feel like, that's it, you'll never return, don't even try, figure it out over there, and like you say, we're forgotten about, we're discarded, we're thrown over the border. At least that's how it felt like to me. You know, there's no follow-up, there's no numbers, they don't even know how many deported veterans exist. You know, nobody tracks us, nobody knows what happens to us, there's no statistics. A lot of us don't make it. There's people that die, and you know, from the process, there's people that are, you know, put in situations that they end up victims of crimes. They're not able to access medical care. So many stories like ours that don't have, perhaps not a happy ending, but at least they, you know, we're doing okay, right? And I think part of, at least for me, in sharing these deportation stories is to give them a voice, because I feel like we do live in the shadows. We do, or we're meant to feel like we're supposed to stay there. Particularly like Mexican culture, they're not very forgiving either, you know, and it's almost like something we're supposed to be ashamed of, that we're deported, and trying to find our ground, where we belong, what community is going to accept us. And you know, for somebody that's spent a decade in prison, that is a struggle in itself, reintegrating into society, but reintegrating into a new culture, you know, because it is really new to us. We didn't grow up in it. We were raised in the American culture. I identify more as an American internally, like American customs, American holidays, American everything, American wiring. And then out here, you have to quickly adapt to the Mexican ways, you know, to stay alive, really.
Yes, exactly. I've been trying to work on how people perceive us here in Mexico through my artwork, right? Like I say, you know, sometimes people judge us just because of our past, because we were deported. But I've been trying to work on that misconception, right? I've been trying to, through my artwork, I've been trying to, you know, paint an image, you know, saying, hey, you know what, we're Mexican too, you know, we're Mexicanos también. So.
I noticed your hat. You said deportados.
Sí.
Did you make it?
Yes. I designed it, yes.
That's you don't see that a lot. Most of us try to hide that from society here.
Yes, most people try to hide it, and you know, I've seen that for a lot of years. And me personally, I'm just tired of hiding it. And like I said, I'm tired of living in the shadows. You know, if nobody speaks up about our situation, either nobody ever will, or the ones who do speak up about it are going to do so through their political agenda. You know, so it's up to us to speak up. You know, it's up to us to organize ourselves. You know.
Yeah. Change can't come without people knowing what's actually happening. An example, our deportation process. I believe the way that they deport us poses a significant threat to our safety from the way that we go ghost for, they pick us up, we're excommunicated from our attorneys, from our family, until we pop up in Mexico. There's no opportunity for us to make arrangements, to get some cash, to set up some type of plan for when we reach the other side. And that's been happening for decades. Like, that's the way that they've deported us for many, many, many years. If there was one thing I could change about the entire process, it would be that, for them to find a way to do so in a way that doesn't just throw us out and make us so vulnerable and, strip us of everything as we cross the border. We all know, if you've been deported, that there's no resources. There's no real resources out here. I didn't know of any. I didn't know where I was headed into, and I had my family in the States, and that's kind of what paved my way. But it's the same experience that we're just kind of dropped off, and good luck. I think there should be some type of a bridge, not a halfway house, but something, to lessen the cultural shock, and along with everything else, especially for people who are coming out of prison. Like, that is honestly a setup, from spending decades. I've interviewed, people that have served 40 years in prison and deported in the same way, just dropped off into a new era, a new world, a new country with nothing, and that to me is so inhumane. That there's just has to be more, there has to be a way to lessen that ripple effect that not only expands into us, but into U.S. citizens, from our children, family, taxpayers. It goes out so far. And a lot of the times those people that you meet that say, oh, you deserved it, oh, that's one less Mexican, but you don't realize that experience is rippling out to even them, whether it's through taxpayers or it ripples into the community, the fear, the uncertainty. I mean, we're seeing it now in real time in the mess that is up there in politics between immigration reform and elections and all that shit. That, in a perfect world, to me, maybe to people like us, there will be a world with no walls, no borders. Every time I come here to TJ and I see it, it's like you said, it's a big reminder. It's a symbol. It symbolizes what keeps us separated from our families. It symbolizes the racism, the prejudice, the lack of freedom, just as humans, to be able to continue walking down that beach, to be able to reunite with our families, to be able to have our kids in our lives every day, not just every month or every weekend, for you, that you have family, you're in a position where they can cross periodically. A lot of us are further down south where we don't see our family for years, or our families are undocumented, so there's people that lose, that connection with them for a long, long time, sometimes forever, until some type of reform or some type of change to where, we could reunite with our families. Tell your wife, thank you so much for this newspaper. I was trying to get a hold of it and trying to find somebody to ship it to me, so this means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Sorry to bother you guys. I kind of heard a little bit of your interview.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I just walked up here to get a drink. I just got here a week ago.
Are you deported too?
Exactly. And I was prior military over there.
You're part of veteran.
Yeah.
Can I do this?
I've been only here like a week. My family got put me on around to pick me up, like to go out. But it's funny that I just got here and I heard all this and I see you guys.
Where are you from?
Where I'm from? I was born in North Papa, but I've lived my entire life in the U.S. since I was in myself. I got into trouble like some time, 6 years, and being stubborn and never fixed all my things. I never fixed all my paperwork. And they reported me that I'm here now.
Have you gotten a chance to go to the or you know about the deported veteran, the Tijuana bunker?
I talked to the guy Hector, the guy who's in charge of it, but I talked to him for like 10 minutes, but I haven't heard from him since. I tried to ask him a couple questions. They know he's a busy guy, and
I know they help a lot. They help out if they take care of each other a lot.
It's crazy to run into you guys right now.
Would you like to have coffee with us?
my baby.